Hi there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back Global Coin News. Before we begin, imagine finding in your pocket change something that could change your life overnight. Well, that's exactly the dream with rare Canadian pennies, and today's video is one you absolutely do not want to skip. Imagine pulling a small, ordinary-looking Canadian penny from an old drawer, a piggy bank, or even a forgotten jar of coins, only to discover that it could be worth thousands to millions of dollars today. Sounds unbelievable, right? But in the world of rare coin collecting, this happens more often than you think. Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating world of the most valuable top 6 Canadian pennies, coins that may look simple at first glance but carry incredible history, rarity, and serious dollar value in today's active collector market. Watch this video till the end, because one of these pennies could completely change how you look at loose change forever. So let's get started. First up, the Canadian 1-cent penny of 1952. A coin that many people overlook, yet one that has captured the attention of serious collectors and auction houses around the world. Because what you think is pocket change could, under the right circumstances, be worth a life-changing amount of money. The year 1952 holds a special place in Canadian history. It marks the final year of the reign of King George VI, whose portrait appears on this coin. Canada was still recovering from the effects of World War II, industries were growing, and everyday objects like coins were quietly documenting a nation in transition. The Royal Canadian Mint struck the 1952 1-cent penny during a time of both economic rebuilding and political change. Sadly, King George VI passed away in February of that year, making 1952 pennies some of the last coins ever issued with his effigy. This historical context alone gives the coin emotional and historical weight, increasing its appeal among collectors who value coins not just as metal, but as frozen moments in time. But long before its retirement, in the post-war era of the early 1950s, the Canadian penny of 1952 was struck under the reign of King George VI, a monarch whose tenure spanned times of immense global change. This was one of the last pennies to carry his portrait, as the year 1952 marked the end of his reign and the beginning of Queen Elizabeth II's long era on Canadian coinage. When we look closely at the 1952 Canadian 1-cent penny, its design tells a powerful story. On the obverse side, the dignified portrait of King George VI faces left, surrounded by the Latin inscription, George of 6 de Gratia Rex, which translates to, George VI, by the grace of God, King. This design reflects the elegance and authority of the monarchy during that era. The reverse side features the iconic maple leaf branches, a symbol deeply rooted in Canadian identity, paired with the denomination, 1 cent, and the date, 1952. The coin is composed primarily of bronze, giving it that rich reddish-brown tone collectors love. In fine condition, many of the finer details, including the veins of the maple leaves and the sharpness of the king's portrait, remain clearly visible, making it especially attractive to enthusiasts. The design itself is rich with symbolism. On the obverse, the coin features the dignified profile of King George VI, crafted by renowned British artist Thomas Humphrey Paget, a perfect capture of regal confidence in that era. On the reverse, you see the iconic pair of maple leaves hanging from a twig, a timeless emblem of Canada's national identity, originally designed by G. Kruger Gray in 1937 and remaining a beloved motif for collectors ever since. What truly sets the 1952 penny apart is not just its design or age, but its rarity when found in desirable condition. While millions were minted, most entered circulation and were heavily used in daily commerce. Over decades, countless examples were worn smooth, corroded, lost, or melted down. Finding a 1952 penny today in fine condition where major design elements are still intact and readable is becoming increasingly difficult. Even more valuable are coins with original surfaces, minimal cleaning, and natural toning. Collector demand rises sharply when a coin survives time without damage, and that demand intensifies even further when combined with historical significance. In today's auction market, the value of the 1952 Canadian 1-cent penny can vary dramatically depending on condition, originality, and collector interest. Common circulated examples may still trade modestly, but fine condition pieces command much stronger prices. When you move into higher-end fine to extremely fine grades, especially coins with excellent eye appeal, prices can climb into the hundreds of dollars. Exceptional specimens, particularly those with rare die varieties, strong strikes, or outstanding preservation, have been known to reach into the $1.8 million at specialized auctions. Coins graded and certified by professional grading services often achieve the highest prices, as collectors are willing to pay a premium for authenticity and condition assurance. Collectors who understand the market know that timing also plays a major role. When demand spikes due to anniversaries, increased interest in pre-Elizabeth II Canadian coinage, or international buyer competition, prices can surge dramatically. A coin purchased modestly today could be worth significantly more in the future, especially as surviving high-quality examples continue to disappear into long-term collections. For collectors hoping to benefit from coins like the 1952 Canadian penny, knowledge is everything. Always handle coins carefully, preferably by the edges, and store them in protective holders to prevent further wear. Avoid cleaning coins, as improper cleaning can destroy value instantly. Study recent auction results, learn about grading standards, and pay attention to subtle details such as mint luster, strike quality, and surface marks. Networking with other collectors and reputable dealers can also open doors to better opportunities and rare finds that never reach the public market. The 1952 Canadian 1-cent penny stands as a powerful reminder that small objects can carry immense stories and surprising value. It represents the end of a royal era, the resilience of a nation, and the enduring passion of collectors who see beauty where others see spare change. Whether you are a seasoned numismatist or someone just beginning to explore the world of coins, never underestimate what might be hiding in your collection. Next up, the 1972 Canadian 1-cent penny in extra fine condition and its appeal to collectors in the market today. You pick up a small copper coin. Just a penny dated 1972. To most people it's just spare change, something you toss into a jar or forget in your pocket. But to the right eyes, this tiny Canadian 1-cent piece can be a gateway into a world of history, design, rare surprises, and yes, potential value far beyond its face. We're diving deep into the story of the 1972 Canadian penny, and why an extra fine condition example can captivate collectors and sometimes command impressive dollars on the market. The 1972 Canadian penny isn't rare in the way a 1936 penny or mystery silver piece might be, but under the surface of millions struck lies potential for something much more intriguing when conditions align. Stay with me, because this little coin has more to say than you might think. To understand why the 1972 penny matters, we have to go back further than its face value. For much of Canada's history, the 1-cent coin was a staple of everyday commerce so common that few people gave it a second thought. The Royal Canadian Mint struck hundreds of millions of these pennies in 1972 alone, stamping them with the familiar profile of Queen Elizabeth II on the obverse and a pair of maple leaves on the reverse, a symbol as Canadian as hockey itself. That maple leaf twig design, created by famed engraver G. Kruger Gray, had been a fixture since the 1930s and remained unchanged through the 1970s. On the front, the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by Arnold Mackin, gazed back at Canadians, a constant reminder of the country's heritage and connection to the crown. Though millions were minted, this era of pennies now holds a special nostalgic significance, not least because the penny was officially withdrawn from Canadian circulation in 2013, ending over a century of copper coinage. At first glance, the 1972 penny is simple: a small, round copper-based coin. Its bronze composition and classic dimensions, about 19.05 mm in diameter and 3.24 g in weight, make it immediately recognizable. What many people overlook, though, is how much subtlety there is in condition, finish, and collectible traits, while retaining most of its original details. On an EF 1972 penny, the tiny veins in the maple leaves stand out crisply, the lettering around Queen Elizabeth's portrait is sharp, and the metal still breathes that gentle, aged copper glow. These details mean everything to collectors, because those surface features are what define grade and desirability. But there's more. Some 1972 pennies exhibit era traits or unusual characteristics, doubling on letters, off-center strikes, or subtle die abnormalities, and while these are rare, they can dramatically boost a coin's story and potential value. Here's where things start to get interesting. The sheer number of 1,972 pennies produced means most are common in circulated condition, worth only a fraction above their original face value. But when you find one in extra fine condition or better, especially preserved with original color and minimal wear, the dynamic changes. Collectors seek coins that tell a story of preservation, ones that survive decades nearly untouched. In extra fine or higher grades, the subtle sheen of the original mint luster still lingers. These coins aren't just rare in the sense of survival. They are increasingly scarce because most pennies were used, scratched, and spent until they disappeared or were melted down after 2013. And when you talk about market demand, coins that grade at the upper end like MS-65 or above are the ones auction houses and serious collectors watch closely. Certified examples from grading services like PCGS or NGC bring confidence and can substantially enhance value, especially when the coin's details and strike quality shine. A typical circulated coin with wear and aged patina might still be worth only its face value 1 cent or a small premium to a collector, often under $1. But the story changes when you look at coins in pristine condition. Extra fine examples, particularly those certified and showing rich original color, commonly sell in higher price tiers. For instance, uncirculated grades like MS65 red coins can fetch prices significantly above face value, even into the $496,000 on auction platforms when demand is healthy. And while most 1972 pennies won't fetch thousands, there are reports from the broader numismatic world of rare copper coins, especially era versions, drawing hundreds or occasionally more when authenticated and graded. Collectors have noted examples of misstruck or double-die coins from various series bringing well over typical values, underscoring how rarity and condition can shift a common coin into collectible territory. If you're just dipping your toes into coin collecting or have a jar of old pennies and want to see what you've got, start with the basics. Examine your coins under good lighting with a magnifier. Look for sharp details, minimal wear, and original color, especially that rich red copper tone that many collectors prize. That might seem counterintuitive, but cleaning can reduce a coin's grade and potentially destroy value. Instead, seek a professional opinion or consider sending promising pieces to a reputable grading service. Also be aware that era coins, those with doubled dies, off-center strikes, or other anomalies, are often the ones that surprise collectors with value. If you think you've found something unusual, consult experienced numismatists or online resources to compare and verify. It's much more than a relic of copper and date. It's a slice of Canadian history, a testament to craftsmanship, and depending on its condition and unique traits, a potential treasure in the eyes of collectors. While most of these pennies remain common in everyday hands, the exceptional ones, the extra fine, the error-bearing, the certified beauties, are the coins that turn heads and sometimes bring real value to those who recognize their worth. Next up, imagine holding a small, dark brown copper coin in your hand, worn by time, passed through countless pockets, markets, and moments of history. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Just 1 cent. But what if I told you that this humble coin from Canada, dated 1941, could be worth far more than its face value today, so much more that collectors around the world are still hunting for it in circulated condition? This is not just a penny. This is a silent witness to history, and in rare cases, it can be worth thousands of dollars in today's auction market. The story of the 1941 Canadian 1-cent penny begins during one of the most intense periods in world history. Canada was deeply involved in the Second World War, and every resource mattered. Copper was critical for military use, ammunition, and communication equipment, yet the Royal Canadian Mint continued producing 1-cent coins to keep daily commerce running smoothly. These pennies were struck under pressure, during wartime uncertainty, which makes them historically powerful and emotionally valuable to collectors today. Every circulated 1941 penny carries the weight of that era, a time when even small change played a role in a global struggle. Design-wise, the 1941 Canadian penny is a classic and iconic coin. On the obverse, you'll find the portrait of King George VI, facing left, with refined details that reflect British royal artistry. The inscriptions surrounding the portrait read George VI Rex ETIND, reminding us that Canada was still closely tied to the British Empire at the time. On the reverse side, the famous maple leaves on a branch dominate the design, a powerful symbol of Canada's identity and strength. Below the leaves sits the denomination 1 cent and beneath it, the date, 1941, quietly marking its place in history. The coin was struck in bronze, giving it that rich reddish-brown tone when new, now often darkened or softened by circulation. What makes this coin truly exciting for collectors is not just the design or the year, but the small variations, errors, and conditions that can turn an ordinary circulated penny into a high-value collectible. Many 1941 pennies show weak strikes, die cracks, doubled details, or subtle planchet irregularities due to wartime minting conditions. These features are often overlooked by casual collectors, but sharp-eyed numismatists know that such imperfections can dramatically increase value. Even circulated examples can become extremely desirable if they show strong details, unusual toning, or rare minting characteristics. Rarity plays a major role in collector demand, and while millions of 1941 pennies were produced, truly collectible examples are far scarcer than most people realize. Coins that survived circulation with readable dates, strong maple leaf details, and minimal corrosion are becoming harder to find each year. Add an error, a variety, or exceptional eye appeal, and suddenly demand rises fast. Serious collectors compete aggressively for these pieces, especially those certified by professional grading services. In today's market, demand for early 20th century Canadian coins is growing internationally, pushing prices higher with every major auction. Now the current market value. In average circulated condition, a normal 1941 Canadian penny may sell for a modest amount. But here's where things get exciting. High-grade circulated examples, coins with rare die varieties, mint errors, or exceptional historical appeal can reach $235,000, and in some extraordinary cases, values can climb into the $315,000 at auction. Coins with verified errors, strong collector demand, and professional grading have shocked the market before, proving that even a 1-cent coin can become a 4-figure treasure. If you're a collector or someone who just found an old Canadian penny in a drawer, there are important tips you should follow. Always examine your coin under good lighting and magnification. Look closely at the date, the king's portrait, and the maple leaves for unusual details or doubling. Never clean the coin, because cleaning can destroy its value instantly. Store it safely in a protective holder, and consider professional grading if you believe it may be rare. Staying updated with auction results and collector forums can also help you understand what the market is currently paying for coins like yours. The 1941 Canadian 1-cent penny is far more than spare change. It's a piece of wartime history, a symbol of Canada's resilience, and a reminder that value is not always obvious at first glance. Whether your coin is worth a few dollars or a few thousand, its story alone makes it special. And who knows, one careful look at that old penny could change how you see your collection forever. So check your coins, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the smallest coin can carry the biggest surprise. Next up, the 1953 Canadian 1-cent penny is one of the most fascinating and misunderstood chapters in Canadian numismatic history. The year 1953 holds a very special place in Canada's coinage story. It was the first year Queen Elizabeth II appeared on Canadian coins after the passing of King George VI. Canada was stepping into a new era, and the Royal Canadian Mint was under immense pressure to release updated coin designs quickly. That urgency led to something extraordinary: multiple design changes, subtle differences, and rare varieties that collectors would not fully understand until years later. The 1953 Canadian 1-cent penny was struck in bronze, composed primarily of copper, giving it that warm reddish-brown tone collectors love. On the obverse, you'll see a young Queen Elizabeth II, facing right, wearing a laurel wreath rather than a crown. This portrait is elegant but historically controversial, as many felt it lacked royal symbolism. Around her portrait runs the inscription Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina, proudly announcing the beginning of her reign. Flip the coin over, and the classic maple leaf design greets you, a symbol deeply rooted in Canadian identity. The veins of the leaf, the sharpness of the stem, and the clarity of the lettering 1 cent and Canada are all crucial details that determine value. In extra fine condition, these elements remain strong and well defined, with light wear only on the highest points. The date 1953 stands clear, bold, and unbroken, which is exactly what serious collectors look for. What truly makes the 1953 penny legendary, however, is not just the year, it's the varieties. During production, the Mint experimented with different obverse designs. Some coins were struck with what collectors later called the shoulder fold portrait, while others featured the rarer no shoulder fold design. These differences are subtle and easy to miss for the untrained eye, which is why so many valuable examples slipped into circulation unnoticed. In extra fine condition, the coin still tells its story beautifully. You can see the texture of the maple leaf, the hair details of the queen, and the natural aging of the copper without heavy damage or corrosion. Coins in this grade strike a perfect balance. They are circulated enough to feel historic, yet preserved enough to command strong prices. Rarity is where the magic truly happens. Certain 1953 varieties were produced in much smaller numbers, and many were lost to circulation, damage, or melting over time. Today, collectors compete fiercely for well-preserved examples, especially those correctly identified and authenticated. Demand comes not only from Canadian collectors but also from international investors who see early Elizabeth II coins as long-term historical assets. Now let's talk about what everyone wants to know: the money. In today's active collector market, a regular 1953 Canadian 1 cent penny in extra fine condition can already bring impressive value compared to face value. but specific varieties, especially the rarer portrait types, can sell for $185,000, and in exceptional cases, prices can climb into the $267,000 when condition, rarity, and demand align perfectly. Auction records show that well-graded examples with strong eye appeal consistently outperform expectations, especially when competition heats up. For collectors hoping to find or invest in one of these coins, knowledge is everything. Always examine the portrait closely, compare it with known variety images, and pay attention to wear patterns. Storage matters too. Keeping the coin in a proper holder, away from moisture and handling, can protect its value for years. Certification from a trusted grading service can also transform a good coin into a market-ready treasure. The 1953 Canadian 1-cent penny is not just a piece of copper. It's a symbol of transition, history, and hidden value. A coin many people overlook, yet one that continues to surprise collectors around the world. Next up, the 1979 Canadian 1-cent penny, a coin that circulated in everyday pocket change, but today commands a mystique in the coin collecting universe that goes far beyond its modest beginnings. From rich history to surprising market values, the 1979 Canadian penny still captures collectors' attention. We need to go back to its roots. The Canadian 1-cent coin, affectionately known as the penny, was an essential part of Canada's monetary system for over a century. In 1979, the Royal Canadian Mint struck this coin as part of a long lineage of pennies that had been circulating since the early 20th century, a lineage that would eventually end in 2012 when the penny was formally discontinued due to rising production costs and declining use. On the front of the coin, we see the timeless portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, a symbol of the Commonwealth and continuity, designed by Arnold Mack in the same effigy that graced Canadian pennies throughout the 1970s. On the reverse, the iconic pair of maple leaves on a twig designed by G.E. Kruger Grace celebrates Canada's national identity and natural heritage. This design choice was simple, elegant, and unmistakably Canadian. In total, hundreds of millions of these coins were released into circulation, making the 1979 penny a familiar sight in wallets, cash registers, and everyday transactions. But as with many coins of this era, the mass of ordinary circulation pieces hides a deeper numismatic tale. Let's talk about what makes this penny physically and historically fascinating. The 1979 Canadian penny was crafted from a bronze alloy composed primarily of 98% copper, with tin and zinc making up the rest. It measures around 19.05 millimeters in diameter and weighs about 3.24 grams, a little piece of metal rich not just in copper, but in story. The obverse features Queen Elizabeth II, her crown profile surrounded by the inscription Elizabeth II DG Regina, a Latin abbreviation acknowledging her royal titles. On the flip side, the maple leaf design stands proudly over the word Canada and the denomination 1 cent. It's a design that connects the mundane, the penny, to the symbolic heart of Canadian culture. While most of these coins are common, numismatists also look for subtle varieties and anomalies, things like doubling on the date, minting irregularities, or unusual strikes that can elevate a common penny into something special. These quirks are the heart and soul of coin collecting excitement. Now here's where the story really gets interesting. A key thing that defines a coin's allure to collectors isn't just the year it was minted, it's how it survived. The everyday circulated pennies, the ones that spent decades jingling in pockets and jars, typically show signs of wear. On a collector scale, these are graded as circulated, and despite their age, most are still only worth just a few cents above face value. But as any numismatist will tell you, condition is everything. Uncirculated specimens, those that came straight from the mint and never passed through everyday hands, are much rarer. Coins that preserve their original red copper luster and sharp details attract collectors like treasure hunters. Higher grades, especially those certified by professional grading services, can fetch significant premiums. Then there are the curious anomalies, coins with die errors, off-center strikings, or misaligned dates. These unusual examples are far less common and are often the reason a collector gets truly excited, because for every jar of ordinary pennies, there's a chance a rare gem is lurking just beneath the surface. If you're imagining finding a 1979 Canadian penny worth thousands of dollars in circulated condition, that's rare. Most circulated 1979 pennies, even in decent shape, trade for only a few cents to a few dollars, reflecting their high original production numbers. That said, the value structure changes dramatically when we talk about condition and rarity. Mint state pennies graded MS65 or higher with strong original copper color may sell for $310,000 and sometimes more, especially in certified form where buyers have confidence in the grade. Error coins and special varieties can climb even higher, depending on the nature and rarity of the anomaly. Especially in uncirculated or error categories fetching noteworthy sums among dedicated collectors. While it's unlikely for a normal circulated 1979 penny to sell for $585,000, the right rare variant in immaculate condition can still command surprising prices in specialized auction markets. So if you're a collector or just someone who happened upon a jar of old coins, what should you do? First, don't clean your coins. That tempting instinct can actually destroy a lot of their collectible value. Instead, handle them by the edges, use gloves if you have them, and inspect them carefully under good lighting to preserve surface details. Look for coins that retain full original color, sharp details, and minimal contact marks. If you find anything that looks exceptionally pristine or carries unusual markings or misprints, consider having it professionally graded because certification can unlock its full market potential. The world of coin collecting rewards curiosity, patience, and a sharp eye. Every penny has a story, and sometimes the most unexpected finds turn out to be the most memorable. In the grand tapestry of collectible coins, the 1979 Canadian 1-cent penny may seem like a humble thread. But when you trace its history, study its design, and explore its variations, you begin to see why collectors find it fascinating. From everyday pocket change to prize pieces in a collection. Next up, you've probably held one before, that tiny copper coin in your hand that once jingled in pockets and coin jars all across Canada. We're diving deep into the story behind one seemingly ordinary piece of metal, the 1980 Canadian 1-cent penny, specifically in circulated condition, and exploring whether this everyday coin has turned into a rare treasure worth thousands on the auction block. From the moment it left the Royal Canadian Mint over 4 decades ago, the 1980 penny was destined to be more than just spare change. The year 1980 was part of a massive era of penny production in Canada, when nearly every transaction buying candy, tipping a busker, saving up in a piggy bank involved this little cent. In that year alone, hundreds of millions of these pennies were struck in Ottawa to meet everyday demand. It was an era before digital transactions, when physical currency was part of daily life. Yet, as the world shifted and the cost of producing pennies outpaced their value, Canada eventually retired the penny altogether in 2012. What was once pocket change became a fascination for collectors, historians, and treasure hunters. Some people began to ask, could a worn 1980 penny, one that circulated for years in wallets and piggy banks, be more valuable than its face value? To understand this, you need to know what makes this coin tick its features and story. On the front side, called the obverse, sits a familiar image, Queen Elizabeth II, depicted in elegant profile, a design by Arnold Mackin that graced Canadian coins for decades. Around her the inscription reads Elizabeth II DG Regina, Latin for Elizabeth II by the grace of God, Queen. On the back or reverse you see 2 maple leaves on a single twig, symbolizing the heart of Canadian identity and pride. This reverse design, created by G. E. Kruger Gray, was consistent with Canadian pennies of the era and connected generations through a simple yet powerful national emblem. Physically, the 1980 penny wasn't large, about 19 millimeters across, weighing roughly 2.8 grams, and made primarily of bronze, a blend of mostly copper with tin and zinc, the classic warm reddish tone that many collectors still admire. Now here's where the story gets interesting: rarity and condition. You might imagine that because nearly 1 billion of these pennies were minted, every one of them would be common, and in a sense, that's true. In circulated condition, most 1980 pennies you find in change are extremely common. Their values are close to face value or just a few cents above in typical worn condition. Numismatists grade coins on how well they've survived decades of handling, scratching, and aging. A heavily worn coin that was dropped on sidewalks for decades is far less desirable than one that sat untouched in a collector's album for 40 years. In the rarest cases, if a circulated coin is unusually well preserved with strong detail and minimal wear, it can command interest well above what your everyday coin fetches. In the uncirculated world, where a coin looks almost brand new, values jump significantly. Some high-grade uncirculated 1980 pennies can be worth several dollars to tens of dollars each, and if there's a certified high-grade or a quality designation, some examples go even higher. Now, you might be thinking thousands of dollars, that sounds impossible. And you're right to be skeptical. Unlike legendary rare pennies from other countries where famous era coins have sold for $828,000 at auction, the standard Canadian 1980 penny doesn't enter that realm just because it circulated. Most circulated 1980 pennies are still worth just pennies or a few dollars at most to collectors. However, there are certain out-of-the-ordinary versions or errors off-center strikes, unusual die varieties, or exceptionally preserved coins that catch the eyes of serious collectors and can fetch more than typical examples. These are the kinds of pieces that get people excited in coin forums and auctions. But even then, hitting the market with a $1.4 million value for a circulated 1980 penny is extremely rare and usually tied to something unique about that particular coin's history or condition. For collectors, the existence of these outliers drives demand. People love the thrill of the hunt, the dream that the next coin in a jar might be the one that changes their collection. And while most 1980 pennies won't make anyone rich, learning what to look for and understanding grading can make collecting rewarding in other ways. So, what should you do if you think you've found a special 1980 penny? First, don't clean it or try to improve it, because coin collectors prize original surfaces and cleaning usually destroys value. Seek out reputable grading services or knowledgeable dealers if you believe your coin has exceptional features. The 1980 Canadian penny is emblematic of a bygone era, a coin that was once ordinary, now cherished more for its nostalgia, history, and the hope that somewhere out there, a rare find might still be waiting to be discovered. Whether it's worth $1 million, every coin tells a story, and every collector knows that the passion behind collecting is about more than dollar value alone. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the hidden world of coin collecting, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what rare find you have unearthed. Keep hunting, and you never know, the next ordinary penny might be your extraordinary treasure.